Choose black lives or blue lives. Choose family or friends. Choose Christian or Muslim. Choose liberal or conservative. Choose black or white. Choose, choose, choose. Pick a side. Define your tribe. Choose. So how are you feeling right now? These are the feelings that many experience when opening their cell phone, heading home for Thanksgiving, or even heading to their place of worship. These feelings and more were described by people who signed up to have a conversation about race. A room full of more than 30 mostly white individuals shared their hopes and fears around entering this conversation. Each individual shared hopes for deeper understanding or changes in outcomes, and almost all admitted to a level of trepidation around saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing in a conversation about race. And sometimes they express remorse for being silent when they believe they should have said something. What if someone thinks I'm racist? So what do? We hear facts and figures and outcomes about race and terms, and all of those things inform our conversation, but how do we have it? Do we just sweep it under the rug because it's too troublesome and too divisive? But to quote an esteemed philosopher from the Modern Family show, sweeping things under the rug creates a tripping hazard. So it's really time for us to have, and I mean really have, this conversation. So will you join me at the table? You know, how do we get there? How do we find ourselves back to each other in the conversation around race, which is one of America's longest and deepest held divides? So I would like to offer two things for us to stop doing and two things for us to start doing in this conversation about race. Because very often we don't hear the truth about what people should stop doing in these particular conversations. So two things. First, stop denying. There are two areas we like to deny. We deny seeing color and we deny having bias. And they are often one and the same. Our colorblind friends have the best of intentions. They are communicating, I don't see or judge people based on the color of their skin. I hold no preconceived notions of good or bad. In fact, I just see everyone as part of one race, the human race. However, bias research uncovers our subconscious behaviors that indicate this notion is highly improbable and almost neurologically impossible. We are designed and inclined to have bias as protective factors. However, we don't know how to cut this filter off when it comes to issues around race. We do not exist in a bias-free culture. In fact, quite the opposite. Students in the study were divided into two groups, where students in Group A were taught this wonderful colorblind curricula, while others in Group B were taught a color and diverse affirming curricula. After the lessons, students listened to stories, some laced with discrimination and bias against people of color. The colorblind students were 30% less likely to perceive the acts as discriminatory, and they were less inclined to actually intervene. So, colorblindness may literally cause blindness to injustice, making us part of the problem and not the solution. So why are too many of us so prone to deny seeing color? Well, truth be told, we've been socialized to believe we all have access to American ideals like meritocracy, or what I call the bootstrap theology, right? The problem with the colorblind view is that even under equal circumstances, society's racial bias still leaves citizens of color disadvantaged. So anyone can make it, right, if they work hard enough. Well, what if I add the caveat to really tidy up this argument, all things being equal? Let's add that. Anybody could have anything if they work hard enough, all things being equal, right? Let's say we started at the same level, same household income, same public education, very similar, even identical circumstances. And let's just say the only difference, and I mean the only difference, is our race. Oh, we're both known for our dogged work ethic. We see tasks through and we take on more when given the opportunity. And all things being equal, we apply for jobs. Several studies reveal that all things being equal does not equate to equal opportunity. One study generated identical sets of resumes where the only difference between the two sets was the names assigned to the resumes. One set was given to white sounding names, and the other were given black sounding names. The results were profound, though. White applicants with identical credentials received callbacks twice more than their black counterparts. And similar studies around applying for mortgages, renting apartments, or other opportunities bore out the same results. All things being equal. All things being equal does not pan out the same when you are a person of color. No one is opposed to working hard to achieve a dream, but we are opposed to those who choose to be blind to the biased mechanisms that decrease and often eliminate such options for people of color. Anywhere from the subprime lending crisis to the impacts of redlining and gentrification, our society has de-strapped and debooted people of color, and yet we have learned to persist. People we must stop denying. What's that second stop? Let's stop credentialing. Well, you might say, well, what's credentialing, right? It really is when we list our credentials, right? I have a degree, I'm from here, I'm from there, I do these things, I have this talent or skill. But in a race conversation, it sounds quite different. And let me give you an example. When I was a high school principal, I worked with the teacher struggling to connect with students. In the midst of discussing techniques she could try in order to improve classroom culture and improve relationships and rapport with students, she proceeds to tell me, "You do know I understand what it's like to be black." Well, okay. So I try to ignore this somewhat random comment, and then I recognize, wait a minute, we are in an urban school where the majority of the students are students of color, and they're taught by a majority white staff. So I pause and I try to continue with our conversations about things she can try to better connect with her youth. Yet she insists on making me acknowledge and understand that she knew exactly what it was like to be black. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I'll play. Let's go. Do tell me more. Well, my best friend is black and she lives in New York. So when I found out I would be working here, I called her and I asked her to tell me everything. And wait for it, y'all. She did. She told her everything about being black. Okay, I might be a little sarcastic at this point, but you get the point. If it's not the best friend, it's the spouse, it's the child, it's the trip they took to Africa, and they all have now this downloaded Cliff Note version of what it means to be black, and they completely understand. The truth is, this is birthed from that scariest place of many conversations about race. How will people perceive me? Will they think I'm not connected? Will they think I don't know what I'm talking about? Will they think that I say racial slurs or burn crosses on yards? Will they think I'm a bad person? So what we do, we start credentialing. We launch into all the good we do and what we have done, who we know, who we're related to. Oh, and I've been oppressed too. We're the same. How could I possibly be racist or any part of the problem? I've done my share. And any individual making these comments doesn't realize that this can be perceived as someone seeking exemption. Exempt me from this conversation. Here are my credentials. I refuse to see the need for me to have or continue in these conversations. I've taken the class, I've done the work, and by golly, I've been oppressed too. But what we want is for people to listen. Listen, we are not in the oppression Olympics. We are not trying to deny your struggle. We are just asking to let a conversation about race be about race. So remember, discrimination, oppression, it isn't one monolithic experience. So having experienced socioeconomic discrimination or other types of violence, it doesn't absolve us from interrogating our racial privilege. This line of thinking shuts down opportunities for further conversation and growth. Like the teacher, one conversation will not provide you with the myriad of experiences of Black people, millions of Black people in the United States. You can't get the Cliff Notes in a single conversation or experience. We are all on a journey to healing and wholeness. A thorough examination of race will uncover the multiple intersections of identity, race, gender, poverty, and more. But pause, please, long enough. Go deep enough to know that our work in this conversation about race, is never done. Stay open to the possibility there is more to learn and more ways to grow. So what can we do? You said stop denying and stop credentialing. Okay, so what can we do? Start building. Build your awareness. Own the work to know better and do better. Read. There are many great books, blogs, podcasts, book clubs, workshops, conferences, so many opportunities for you to build your awareness. Ask questions. Build authentic relationships, find mentors, be intentional about making connections that help you grow and stretch you beyond your comfort zone. Build your stamina to lean in. These conversations can get tough. They can be uncomfortable. They will evoke a range of responses, but resist the urge to throw up the stop signs and instead lean in. And finally, start acting. Don't get stuck on not knowing everything or not being enough or feeling hypocritical. Just start talking. Start changing your behaviors. Start changing practices and policies that we know are hindering the move toward racial equity. I have witnessed people leave conversations and change hiring practices. I have witnessed people leave a training and change their teaching practices and conversations with students. I have seen a system implement policy because they did the work of engaging in conversations, tough conversations, with students and families about their racialized experiences in Camas. I have witnessed white people who initially wondered, why are we having a conversation about race? Some who even admitted denial and were those who were very comfortable with delay turned into fierce advocates for racial equity. They have shifted from guilt to growth and a commitment to more equitable outcomes. This change happens one person at a time, one conversation at a time, and one decision at a time. This takes courage. And courage means to do things in the face of fear. This work requires courageous souls committed to change. People from every demographic report appreciation when people have the courage to stand up, the courage to speak up. As the saying goes, if you see something, say something, and be willing to do something if necessary. Stop denying, stop credentialing, start building, and start acting. It's time to choose. Choose. Speak up or stay silent. Choose. You know what I choose? I choose you. That's the third option. I choose humanity. I choose hope. I choose a conversation. I choose to listen. I choose you. We must find our way back to each other and find our way back to the table.